There you are. Hello and welcome once again. This is the second episode of MAGnify 2020, the annual media magazine conference online now. Today we'll be tackling the effects of the corona pandemic on our behavior as consumers and media magazine users. Kantar, the marketing research company, sees almost a 50-50% divide between people. Half of the people don't really care and just go on with their lives, and the other half are worried and even scared. Well, I'm both. Sometimes I'm scared and just stay at home with my mask on, and sometimes I don't really care and I just go out, I shop, I read, I bike, I phone, I pat, I pot, I live. When the lockdown started in Belgium on the 13th of March, there was panic because the government had destroyed all the masks that we needed to protect us from corona. Luckily, my kids and I were very inventive. We started to look around the house and we found masks everywhere. Coffee filters, they work just fine. Or a cuddly tiger like this one. Here, and you're protected. Or a minion, they're perfect masks. And even a brown paper bag will do just fine. We were ready for the corona war. Ha! A month later, in April, President Trump told us to inject ourselves with disinfectant against corona. Now, I am against injecting things into myself, so I took this product orally. Just fine against corona, but it tastes horrible, so I switched to other disinfectants, namely very good Spanish wine and Belgian jenever. Now I drink a bottle a day of each to keep corona away. And look at me, 7 months later, and I still haven't got corona. But time now for the serious part of the day. How did corona and the COVID-19 pandemic really affect our media use and our consumer behavior? Our speaker today is Deniz Sariyildiz. She is a Director, Creative and Media Effectiveness at Kantar Belgium. So please enjoy that speech. And after that, you will see a Stumpa spot, which is an ad campaign especially made by a student, Valentine Cornu, a student at Helha, the Haute École Louvain on Hainaut, especially made for us for MAGnify 2020. Enjoy.
Hi everyone. Hope you're good, either in your homes or in your offices. Today I'm also reaching out to you from my home, so you may occasionally hear some sounds, but I imagine we will be okay overall. Let me share my screen and we will kick this off together. So, my name is Deniz, and I'm working at Kantar Belgium and focusing on media effectiveness. With our clients, we work on understanding how to make best use of earned, owned, paid touch points in order to grow their brand further and optimize the return of their investments. Today, I'm bringing you what we know at Kantar about the value of customer magazines in the media mix. So before we sharpen our focus on the customer magazines, I would like us to take a wider angle and remember certain dynamics from the broad media landscape that has changed and also changed our lives along with them. So people's behaviors are changing with the involvement of technology to our lives. The rise of digital spend has been dramatic, and COVID even fastening certain transitions. Mothers who were worried of their children's screen time had to tell them to sit in front of their PC so they could be at their classrooms, or those of us who were not fond of online shopping very much started to buy even the most convenience products online. Of course, the level of stimuli available on online environments doesn't help much with our attention span, which continues to fall. Here I share some results from our Getting Media Right survey, which is something we do every year to feel the pulse of the industry and spot common challenges from professionals in the advertisers world, agencies, as well as media agencies in particular. And what we see there, one of the key findings from last year is that within this changing and fragmenting landscape, 40% of advertisers and media experts aren't actually sure that they have the right optimal media mix. This is likely due to a lack of understanding of consumer touchpoints and the context in which creatives are being delivered. Of course, this trickles down to the balance within media channels as well, with many in the industry citing lack of confidence that they have the right balance and synergies between digital and offline media. So why is getting media right difficult? Of course, while most marketers are measuring performance to some extent, there are still significant gaps and uncertainties. Most find it tough to assess performance across channels, and of course, blind spots in measurement also mean that channels are not as comprehensively understood as they should be. On top of already dynamic environment, we also get a massive layer of disruption with the global pandemic that we're still going through. As we got locked up in our homes, we had to stop many activities we used to do. We turned even more to certain media touchpoints to be able to connect with the outer world. So what I'm sharing here is the results of our global COVID barometer we conducted at Kantar. COVID-19 Barometer became the leading syndicated study on how COVID-19 is influencing consumer behavior, attitudes, and expectations, and it's conducted over 60 markets. One of the impact of COVID lockdowns were that people started to consume more media, especially TV and online channels, right? We're seeing higher TV viewing levels due to greater availability as people practice social distancing and self-isolation. And TV providing trusted information also may have changed slightly the downturn of the medium that has been facing against digital for the recent years, right? People remembered that the TV is amongst the most reliable source of information. Of course, digital channels involvement is also increasing immensely. When it comes to online, Belgians also consumed more online during COVID. However, when compared to global, the numbers are modest. This is also true for spending time on social networks and visiting websites. On the other side, Belgians' consumption of more traditional media is like newspapers and radio intensified following COVID. Also for magazines, we don't see much of a change compared to before COVID times, whereas globally, we could see an obvious diversion from customer magazines. So we can say Belgians see traditional media as most trusted source of information, which explains a bit the picture and the global difference in Belgian versus global. On top of the trust element, people have been forced to think creatively, of course, about how they could continue with their favorite activities, sports or leisure being amongst them. Here, this is data from Kantar Media, and you can see the huge uplift in visitors, up to 500% for yoga magazine, as people access remote video yoga classes that can be done from home. And this is the proof that magazine media are increasingly defined by content rather than platform. Independent from the changing dynamics, relevant content is always appreciated by people. So let's bring the focus on customer magazines a little bit more. So there is many touch points that can be used to connect with consumers, right? But which ones are the more impactful for any particular brand activity, which is a big question to answer. So we've been running cross-media studies for more than 15 years, where we try to understand and optimize the individual value coming from various media touchpoints, as well as their synergies. Here you see some results from our database analysis, and that proves that every channel can actually contribute to core brand KPIs. There is no one channel that can be boxed for creating awareness or motivation or delivering strategic brand associations. From our point of view, what matters is that each channel gets a specific objective during planning phase and is designed accordingly. Of course, there are differences in their effectiveness levels. When we wanted to see their relative cost effectiveness on generating core KPIs for the brands, we spotted that Facebook, point of sales, online media, as well as magazines are most cost effective across brand objectives. Magazines sitting in the top of the list, top part of the list, along with some relatively newer digital channels, shows a nice opportunity for marketers actually. Also, not undermining the local nuances is rather critical. Like for a luxury brand in Belgium, we run a marketing mix modeling and found that magazines draw relatively strong short-term incremental sales. And this was very much connected to print couponing. This is a rather unique outcome as coupons plays this critical role for consumer experience here in Belgium. Expanding the list to the broader range of touchpoints, including also below-the-line activity, and looking into reach of memory, which is recall of advertising, and quality of the advertising experience, we can also observe that customer magazines is very strong, especially for recall. Readers of magazines already tend to be interested in or have a bond with the brand or category, which increases memorability of this touchpoint, right? If delivered well, it can further enhance this relationship and boost loyalty. Brands can directly control this touchpoint by delivering information beyond, for example, TV spots, because the content is usually perceived as informative instead of merely advertising. So this should definitely be taken into account when designing the creative content for this touchpoint. They play a key role in securing customer loyalty. So some questions marketers can actually ask themselves during planning to get more out of the magazine investment. So first of all, what are the key brand objectives they need to deliver? And how do these objectives actually overlap with what magazine can offer, what magazine's potential as key brand building capabilities, as we've just seen? Are they looking for an opportunity to extend their reach or reinforcing the brand messages in broadcast media in a more cost-efficient way, right? Because magazine offers the opportunity to tap into this highly targeted audiences. At last but not least, giving digital magazines media's highest level of attention and engagement, does this medium really get the sufficient budget in the overall allocation to be able to meet those objectives? So, moving to receptivity and trust, which is an important point to bring onto the table when we talk about advertising. This is about a little bit understanding consumer mindset and how they interact with the different touch points. So to define receptivity, this is about when and where are people open to your messages, right? Even a good ad placed in the right channel and targeting to the right people is not a 100% guarantee of success. Specific contexts and formats, they can make a significant difference to how people will actually perceive that advertising, how much attention they will pay, how they will interpret, etc. When we look at, again, results from our ad reaction study, this is, again, a globally repeated study where we try to understand the relationship between people and advertising, what we've seen that actually all traditional ad formats remain more popular than digital formats. What this means is people are way more open to see and receive advertising on platforms like outdoor, magazine, TV, and magazine having the second place, really. And as you can see, all the digital channels down there by the list. And this is true amongst generations. So independent from the generations, they have higher receptivity for traditional ad formats. In fact, the younger people, Gen Z, is even more receptive for traditional formats like billboards, magazines, newspapers, especially billboards and magazines, than their older counterparts. So, magazines paired up with this high receptivity advantage also offer strong potential to lend detailed information about brands, right? as people are already in the mindset of receiving info when reading a magazine. However, they have a hard task to get the attention in the first place, because unless people are hooked by a strong creative element, they will tend to skip fairly easily, as they have the full control of exposure when they interact with a customer magazine. So that's actually like a connected situation. Like, why people are more receptive to advertising in magazines is about having control. This means creative quality has this massive importance to success. Interesting and eye-catching visuals is a must-have to hook people during their rapid scanning process. So neither weight nor multiple executions can actually compensate for a weak creative in this setting. Creative quality is one of the single biggest drivers of making marketing budgets work harder, and this is true also for magazine content. On top of content, context also matters. Context is one of the areas that 1 out of 3 marketers don't feel very comfortable with understanding their impact. So as an example here, we ran a study with Teeds in the UK, which looked at how an Airbnb ad performed across a range of different contexts. Here you see 3. While you may think that travel would be the best context, as this is where consumers are looking at holiday destinations, travel information, what we actually saw was that the news and lifestyle magazines supported the brand objectives and perception of security much better, as these contexts provided a better wrapper to stand out rather than being lost among other similar travel ads and articles. So it's actually essential to understand the surrounding context and how this fits with your messaging and campaign objectives. This would help to avoid just joining the conversation inappropriately and risking damaging your brand in the process. And testing those theories can help refine your strategy and ensure that you're getting the most out of your media investment. Along with convenience of digital experiences, though, over half of people we spoke, they agree that it's intrusive when they receive advertising as a result of their past online activity, which is amongst the common pitfalls of advertising on digital area, right? So there's a fine line between relevance and an unwelcome pursuit. Great advertising must be trusted to be effective. The extent to which a medium can be trusted by consumers is an increasingly important consideration for advertisers. Advertisers and agency partners are now taking surrounding content into account and holding data owners and publishers to a higher degree of scrutiny than ever before. Consumers trust consumers. The highest trust score are for friends and family and review sites, as expectedly, and there's a certain degree of cynicism about paid media forms and the rise in the use of influencers and social media platforms. On the other hand, printed newspapers and magazine articles, they have a very strong position in terms of acting as a trusted agent, which is a significant advantage against other forms of media. This is very important when influencing customer decisions. When it comes to digital versions, magazines may be more and more tailored to individual needs and interests and offering direct purchasing options. This will likely become more prevalent in the upcoming times, but always consider the fine balance between not being intrusive, harming the trust people have, and being relevant with the advertising shown. And as a research-based consultant, I must mention this last but very important point. So this is again from our Getting Media Right survey. And what we see that marketers' top reasons for allocating budget are all tied to research. Here you see on top, like, knowing target audiences well, where they are more receptive to messages, those that have been successful in the past, and those that are easily measured to demonstrate ROI. So all these elements are kind of connected to making a research, right? So it's always critical to be able to prove the real brand value that the investment will bring. So, to sum up, I just want to highlight 3 key points from today. So we know that decline in print may continue, that's kind of a fact, but the value of professionally edited original content, focusing on a particular passion point shared by a magazine brand and the reader, will definitely continue. So marketers should consider those specific KPIs they want for their brands to achieve align with the loyalty and effectiveness advantage of the medium. How can those 2 things come together and work to grow their brand further? Information from magazines is taken in easily, so there is this opportunity to create really strong brand stories, not necessarily hard sell advertising. However, there is strong control from consumers. This is, let's remember, one core reason why they are receptive to receiving advertising on magazines. So we must really respect their experience there and provide creative content that is very good, very successful to make them stop and take in the messages we want to lend. And last but not least, the content is trusted, but we don't take the context granted. The best context may be different than what we used to think, so make sure to understand which framework, which context will make the brand and its messages flourish better. Do not go with the assumptions. So this was all from me for today. Hope this was useful. You can reach me on my email and LinkedIn. Take care. Bye.